Good day everyone! Good day ma'am! So before our discussion, gusto kong i-share sa inyo yung favorite quote ko for today. It is, I hope that you will always find a reason to smile. So today, we are going to learn about the sources of authority. And I hope that you will listen so that you will gain knowledge about our discussion today. So as you can see, this is the timeline of our discussion. Let's start off with the introduction. So in this discussion, we will learn to identify different sources of authority. Bakit some sources of authority does not really concern ethics? And let's relate some experiences that involves sources of authority. So from this subject, it is clear to us na ang ethics, it talks about good and bad actions. So paano or kailan nga ba natin masasabi na ang action at decision natin ay good or bad? So let's have for example, the act of lying or pagsisinungaling. So we all know na lying is bad. Pag naiisip natin ang pagsisinungaling, ito ay masama. Which is true kasi ito yung rule of thumb. But the real question here is, ano yung basis natin? Or what would be the basis in saying that lying is bad and wrong? Ba't tayo naniniwala na ang pagsisinungaling is a bad action? Ano yung source that will tell us that it is bad? Of course, some of us will answer on set of standards that we have, like law, the religion, and culture. And what really are the sources of authority? So let's move on for the sources of authority. Excuse me. So when it comes to finding about or understanding something or making decision about what to do, most people have various sources of authority that they can go to for guidance and help. This might include, as provided on the presentation, the family, the personal experience, the rational thinking, and conscience. So other religious people also have other sources of guidance and help available to them. Kasali na do yung sacred text, founders of the faith, religious principle or rules, faith community leaders, religious tradition, and other people in the faith community. So insight and inspiration can sometimes come from the beliefs, teachings, and practices of other religions and also from non-religious sources. So these sources of authority, it is where a decision is generally better made if the individual has considered a variety of sources of guidance and help rather than just one. Or if they always consult the same one. Nakakatulong ito sa individual to gain the most complete picture of the situation that they face and the options that are available. And also, it helps them make a better decision. So, why do we obey authority? So, in everyday situation, people obey orders because gusto nila makakuha ng rewards. Because they want to avoid, and also because they want to avoid the negative consequences of disobeying, and because naniniwala sila na ang authority is legitimate. In more extreme situation, people obey even when they are required to violate their own values or commit crimes. So, Milgram Milgram conducted an experiment focusing on the conflict between obedience to authority and personal conscience. So, ayon sa Milgram experiment, agency theory says that people will obey on authority if naniniwala sila na ang authority will take responsibility for the consequences of their actions. This is supported by some aspects of Milgram's evidence. So, Milgram's experiment demonstrated the power of authority and how someone in a position or authority can influence people to behave unethically and against their wishes. Moving on for the third circle explanation, which is the law, religion, and the culture. So now, we will explore these three authority ideas. So alam naman natin kung ano ibig sabihin ng law or batas, di ba? And yes, it is considered as a sources of authority. Also in ethics kasi a law, it guides every country in this world. Law contains mga pinagbabawal or may rules na mga bagay na di dapat pwedeng gawin. So, when we talk about ethics in law, it does not allow bad action. Law can easily claim that actions tulad ng pagnanakaw ay unethical kasi nga po, it's prohibited and against the law. And ang isang action is considered good kung hindi ito prohibited or against the law. So it is very simple, no? And it seems like a good source of authority, especially or specifically in ethics. However, let us not stop here. Let's try to dig deep. Let's try to dig deep and apply our objective on why some terms does not really concern ethics. So in line with this, we might find that there are certain ways of acting which are not forbidden by the law, but are ethically questionable to us, for instance. So let's have this example. According to Article 332 of the Revised Penal Code of the Philippines, states that person exempt from criminal liability in the event of the crimes or theft, swindling, or malicious mischief include spouses of relatives by affinity in the same line. The widowed spouse with respect to property that belong to the deceased spouse and brother and sisters or brothers-in-law and sisters-in-law. So this means na yung pagnanakaw is permitted only to your family members. Ito, nasa batas na to. Which is okay lang na to steal or magnakawan sila dahil it does not have criminal liability. Perhaps, di natin pwedeng sabihin na ethical siya kasi it is not against the law. So we should remember that what is legal is not necessarily moral. Hindi dahil pwede siya sa batas, pwede natin i-consider na moral. And also because we have different culture and religion that we will be discussing for the following slides. Now, let us move on with the next slide. So, religion. On chapter 11 of the book Deuteronomy, sinasabi sa first line doon na love the Lord your God, therefore and always heed His charge, His statutes, decrees, and commandments. So, ibig sabihin nito, many people of a religious sensibility find appealing and immediately valid. So ito yung idea na ang bawat isa sa atin ay oblig to obey her God in all things. And by listening to these figures and reading these writings, an individual discover how the divine how the divine wants her to act. So these scriptures gives this specific religion their guiding principles on how to be a good person. Bawat religion may kanya-kanyang scriptures kung saan doon sila nagbe-base at nagiging guideline nila on what to believe as good and bad. So when we look close, mapapansin natin na most of our laws or batas natin na religion has a strong case to be the source of authority and ethics. Further, taking religion as basis of ethics has the advantage of providing us with not only a set of commands, but also a supreme authority that can inspire and compel our obedience in a way that nothing else can. But then again, let's try to dig deep and analyze it further on why these terms does not really concern ethics. So, assume tayo that religion is a source of authority in ethics. If this will happen, it will lead us to more confusion. Bakit po ba? Kasi, ang dami-daming religion in the world. So the problem lays on which of these many religions is the ultimate source of ethics. Yung isang religion will claim that is their own religion that is ultimate source. So bawat isa ng religion is magpapagalingan. Like, hindi, kami dapat yung source of ethics kasi ganito, ganyan. Makikita natin sa Philippines na some of the religions or religious groups are being discriminated. And this clarify na each faith demands differently from its adherents, which would apparently result in conflicting ethical standards. Another problem is that there are people who are atheists. Sila yung mga taong di naniniwala or those who do not believe in God. However, some of them do good actions naman. Mababait naman silang tao because some of them do not commit crime just because they do not believe in God. So this is why we do not bring religion into the arguments of ethics. It may be a good source of authority, but not really concerning ethics. So let's proceed to the culture. So, so culture, so culture can be defined as all the ways of life, including arts, beliefs. I joke. So cultures can be defined as all the ways of life, including arts or beliefs. So culture has been called the way of life for an entire society. As such, it includes codes of manners, the dress, the language, the religions, and the rituals. For us Filipino, or the Filipino values, ito yung pag-respect sa nakakatanda. We are family-oriented, about our hospitality, and pagmamano. And we proudly say that we value these qualities of Filipinos. So, let's talk about cultural relativism. So, ano nga ba ang cultural culture or cultural relative. So let's talk about culture relativism at ano nga ba ito? So cultural relativism is the ability to understand a culture on its own terms and not to make judgments using the standards of one's own culture. So the goal of this is to promote understanding of cultural practices that are not typically part of one's own culture. So in this culture, relativism, tinuturuan tayo to be tolerant of others from different cultures. Like, just like for example, yung food choices because people have become more tolerant of food from cultures na di galing sa kanilang mismong culture. So sa past, people were more likely to find some types of food unacceptable. But now, they are more likely to not judge others based on their food preferences or food choices. So, dito mo mapapagtanto na, or dito natin mapagtanto na we are in no position to judge whether the ethical thought or practice of another culture is acceptable or unacceptable. Now, let us go with the last circle or the senses of that song. So, your sense of self refers to your perception of the collection of characteristics that defines you. So, personality traits, abilities, likes and dislikes, your belief system, your moral code, and the things that motivate you. Ito, yung mga contribute to self-image or your unique identity as a person. And as said on the lecture, it is sometimes thought that one should not rely on any external authority to tell oneself what the standards of moral valuation are, but should instead turn inwards. So under sense of self, we will discuss these three theories about ethics that center on the self. So first, let us discuss subjectivism. Subjectivism, ito yung idea na ang moral opinions natin are based on our feelings and nothing more. As stated also again on the lecture, he is the one who is confronted with the situation and is burdened with the need to make a decision or judgment. So yung subjectivism, it interprets moral judgment as statements that can be true or false. So a sincere speaker is always right when it comes to moral judgments. Like, for example, walang makakapagsabi sa akin kung ano ang tama or mali, or tama ito kung sinabi kong tama ito. Next sense of self is the psychological egoism. So it is the thesis that we are always deep down motivated by what we perceive to be in our own self-interest. Example of this is a person a person desires some kind of good or benefit, whether fame or eternal life. Another example of this is even someone who gives away most of their money to charity anonymously gets a sense of satisfaction kahit wala namang itong kapalit or reward. Last example is a soldier who jumps on a grenade to save the lives of her bodies is actually doing action for for own good or benefit. So psychological egoism is a theory that all human actions are aimed at avoiding some personal loss or maybe gaining some personal benefit. So next, senses of the self is the ethical egoism. So, pag sinabi nating ethical egoism, ito yung claims that I morally ought to perform some action if and only if. And because performing the action maximizes my self-interest. For example, Jack believes that Jill should promote her own interests in accordance with the ethical egoism. So Jack might believe this, but he isn't going to tell Jill because he looks to his own interests first. So yun yung example ng ethical egoism. So in conclusion of these three, in subjectivism, pag sinabi nating subjectivism, nakikita ko na ang act is morally right or wrong for me if I believe it is. For psychological egoism, nakikita ko na ang human beings can only act on their own self-interest. And for ethical egoism, nakikita ko na ang act is morally right for me if it brings about the best consequences for me. So that's all for my report today. And I hope I gave you some knowledge about the sources of authority. Thank you and God bless. Thank you for listening.